Hello, my name's Jamie Sash and I'm an ambassador for Penfolds. Today I'm at the historic McGill Estate Vineyard and Winery, where it all began. Penfolds is exported right around the world. We make a wide range of terrific wines, and we'll be meeting the people that grow the grapes, and we'll be talking to the winemakers who make those wines to understand the philosophy that underpins Penfolds. Well, here we are, where it all began, the historic Grange Cottage. And who better to tell us the history of Penfolds than John Bird, who started working here in 1960. John, how did Penfolds begin?
Well, in 1844, Dr. Christopher Rawson Penfold, his wife Mary, young daughter Georgina, left the United Kingdom, bought this property, started growing vines from cuttings which they'd brought with them, eventually started making fortified wines for medicinal purposes. And apparently it was pretty popular.
People started to knock on the door, not because they were ill, but they rather liked this new medication they were on.
Yes, apparently it worked and still does.
By 1881, a third of the colony's wine production in South Australia was being produced by Penfolds. Now, John, what sort of wines were they?
Mainly fortified wines of the varieties of Muscatel, Tokay, Frontenac, Shiraz, Grenache. There were some table wines, but very few.
So, John, is it fair to say that after the Second World War, Penfolds entered into a new phase, a modern era, and it was really led by Max Schubert? What happened?
Well, after a trip to Europe in 1950, he came back with the idea of making a red wine that would last for at least 20 years. Thus the experimental 1951 Grange.
Part of the success was also due to the pioneering work of Dr. Arthur Ray Beckwith. What did Ray do?
Ray was a great wine scientist and a top winemaker in his own right, and he contributed the discovery of prevention of bacterial spoilage in wine, and it's obviously proved very successful.
Indeed. Well, John, we've got some barrels of Grange in front of us here from the 2012 vintage. Fair chance they're going to outlast the two of us. What do you think?
Oh, gee. Well, they've already proved, these Granges in the past, that they'll last 60, stored correctly. So when you look at it that way, we may not see the end of those wines.
Thanks, John. Here we are at Penfolds' historic monopole, the McGill Estate Vineyard. George, what's so special about the vines here?
Well, this is the site of the very first Penfolds vineyard, with 5.2 hectares of Shiraz. It's quite a unique site. It's got a nice westerly aspect, and that helps us ripen quite early in the season.
And Steve, we get some pretty good fruit off this vineyard, don't we?
Yeah, the fruit's outstanding, and since 1983, primarily all used for Penfolds, the McGill Estate Shiraz. All made in the old historic winery, only a few hundred metres from here.
Felicity, the Adelaide Hills is such an interesting wine region and very important to Penfolds. What are its defining features?
I think it's a really diverse region with quite a large area, different soils, different climate, gives us lots of different flavours.
Just a touch more rain than some other parts of South Australia.
Yep.
Kim, you get some very good fruit from here. What do you do with it?
Well, I particularly love the Chardonnay from this region because of the cooler climate, the slower ripening, you get beautiful purity of fruit and you get that lovely acid structure. And that's really conducive to what we're looking for Binet and indeed sometimes Yattarna.
The unique soils in Coonawarra, Jamie, the red loam over limestone, which is fantastic to work with.
And what grape varietals are we growing?
Coonawarra is renowned for Terra Rossa soil and Cabernet Sauvignon and Shiraz. Penfolds parcels of fruit are sourced for bin 707, 389 and 407.
And there's a new one in the luxury tier, the bin 169.
That is quintessential Coonawarra. It's what we do best, Cabernet Sauvignon.
George, tell me about the two main sub-regions of the Barossa.
Well, Eden Valley's only 20 minutes away, but it's significantly higher in altitude, so it's much better for white wines, particularly Riesling. And at the moment we're in the Barossa Valley, and that's really well known for its more masculine wines, the Shiraz, Cabernet, Grenache and Mataro.
Steve, we get some exceptional fruit from the Barossa Valley. What sort of wines are you making from here?
Barossa Valley fruit really is the backbone for Penfolds Grange, and a really important blending component in St Henri and of course RWT.
George, we're standing on hallowed ground. Tell us about this particular vineyard.
Yeah, we are standing in Block 42. So it's our most significant vineyard and our oldest, planted in the 1880s. And it's thought to be the oldest continuously producing Cabernet Sauvignon block in the world.
Peter, Penfolds craft a number of different types and styles of wine. What's the underlying philosophy behind them?
Well, I guess now for almost 170 years we've been making three styles of wine: the single vineyard, single viticultural area or multi-regional blend approach. Now here we are at McGill Estate Underground, a 5.2 hectare vineyard out the front. We craft a lovely McGill Estate Shiraz, exemplifying the sense of place, the terroir of that site. With other wines though, like RWT Shiraz from the Barossa up in 128 from Coonawarra, Adelaide Hills Vineyard from the hills just behind us, we make wines representing the best of what that region offers. The third style though, the multi-regional blends, really exemplify perhaps what Penfolds is best known for, making wines to a house style. Now Grange, Bin 707, St Henri, Yattarna, all exemplify those traits.
Penfolds has two wineries. We're here at McGill, a small old winery, and we have one in Nuriuppa. What's the difference between the two? Why have two?
Well, I guess back in 1844, Dr. Christopher Orson Penfold and his wife Mary settled here, and then the winery evolved. So this is the spiritual home, McGill. The Barossa Valley Nuriupta winery is certainly the engine room of all things Penfolds from a wine production perspective.
My name's John Bird. I started with Penfolds in February 1960.
I started at Penfolds in 1978, straight from school, so my very first job.
Well, I joined Penfolds in 1989.
I joined Penfolds in January 1987, so I'm actually in my 27th year with Penfolds.
Started off as a laboratory assistant and soon saw what the winemakers were doing, so I strived to be one myself.
Born and bred in the Barossa Valley, so I've always grown up around vineyards and wine, and my father worked in the wine industry for many, many years as well.
My father was a winemaker at Penfolds for over 30 years. My uncle was a winemaker at Penfolds for over 35 years. My brother was a winemaker at Penfolds for 15 years. So I guess you could say it was my destiny to become a Penfolds winemaker.
The wheels turned slowly in those days, but by 1970 I was a senior winemaker.
Well, I left another career, another lifestyle and came into the world of wine because it's such an appealing world. I collected wine, I drank a lot of wine, and the next thing, of course, the hobby becomes a profession.
And my favourite wine? I would say an aged St Henri.
My two favourite Penfolds wines would be St Henri, and my other favourite Penfolds wine would be RWT, Barossa Valley Shiraz.
Well, everyone knows I love the Bin A Chardonnay, but we're here today in the beautiful rolling hills of Eden Valley. So I think one of the real unsung heroes for Penfolds whites is the Bin 51 Riesling.
People ask me what's my favourite Penfold wine, white, red or otherwise, and it's a very hard question to answer, of course, but a wine I actually grew up with was Bin 389, where quality and value intersect, it's affordable, and you can buy a lot of it. So what better a choice? Bin 389 Cabernet Shiraz from Penfolds.
Penfolds craft a wide range of wines across a number of different price points. They share a family resemblance. Some are like brothers, others are like cousins. But the common DNA, the Penfolds stamp, has been honed across 170 years of winemaking. Across all the price points, Penfolds wines show remarkable propensity to age and develop in the bottle. They become finer with time. Our icon tier includes Grange and Yattarna, the finest Shiraz and the finest Chardonnay that we can craft in any given vintage. The luxury tier is a collection of Shiraz and Cabernet Sauvignon wines that all have a unique point of difference to one another. Highlights from the tier include Bin 707, RWT and Saint Henri. The Bin tier was created during a period of expansion and innovation at Penfolds in the 1960s and 70s. Like the icon and luxury range, the Penfolds bin wines have a remarkable capacity for aging over time, but their price point means you can buy multiple cases and see how they develop. Bin 389 and 407 sit at the top of the Penfolds bin tier. Bin 389 is a blend of Cabernet Sauvignon and Shiraz, affectionately known as the Baby Grange. Bin 407 is 100% Cabernet Sauvignon and follows a similar philosophy to Bin 707, multi-regional sourcing of great Cabernet across South Australia. Bin 28 highlights the warmer climate South Australian fruits, whereas Bin 128 is released a year younger and highlights the perfumed aromatics of cooler climate Coonawarra Shiraz. The single-digit bins 2, 8 and 9 are perfectly complemented to one another, ideally suited to restaurants given their availability and friendly by-the-glass pricing. The Canunga Hill tier is named after the famed Barossa Valley winery that lent its name to the first Canunga Hill wine made in 1976. These wines introduce consumers to the Penfold range, providing outstanding value for money, occasionally hitting 90-plus point scores from major wine publications worldwide. And finally, we have the fortified tier. The fortified wines date back to 1844, when it all began with Dr. Penfolds crafting medicinal tonics to administer to his patients. Today, Penfolds craft a range of fortifieds, from the approachable Club Tawny to the lofty heights of the 50-year-old rare Tawny, a wine that only a handful of producers in the world are capable of making. Remember, each Penfolds tier is made to a house style, and all of our wines show remarkable ability to become finer with time.
Peter, Penfolds got such a long and proud tradition of innovation and pushing the boundaries of contemporary winemaking. Where does this stem from?
Well, right from the very start, it's never stopped. It's been a continuum from the days of Mary Penfold Harland back in 1890 with trophies through to our special bin white wines and reds. These special bin reds, very experimental, but also commercially so viable. Small parcels, the most famous red wine made we've heard in Australia, the Bin 60A of 1962, part of that program. It's been quite incredulous actually watching and monitoring.
And this extends through to the rewards of patience, the book that Penfolds produced. Tell us about that.
Well, that is the means by which we do monitor the innovation across the decades. Every Penfold wine, fortified white and red, is encapsulated in that text. We're now up to edition 7. What winery on planet Earth would open up its museum cellar to a completely independent external assessment, literally of all things Penfolds.
Speaking of assessment, if you're a consumer and you've got an old Penfolds bottle, you could take it to a Penfolds recorking clinic.
Absolutely. Again, another innovation. Yes, some of the Bordeaux Chateau have recorked wines, but we've had a program that's been running continuously across the planet since 1991. Close to 120,000 bottles have been certified in conjunction with Langton's in Australia and Christie's offshore over that period. Amazing.
It's an extraordinary service. Well, Peter, this is something that will never need to be recorked. Penfolds Ampule.
Well, it won't, Jamie. This is a time capsule. It's a Venice work of art. It's the Penfolds Ampule containing the 2004 Block 42 Cabernet. Now, this vineyard, a Penfolds monopole, is the world's oldest continuously producing Cabernet vineyard. The vines have weathered over 120 summers and winters, uninterrupted, the original vines. This has been put together by some Australian artisans. It will be, we hope, opened one day, and another expression of that continuum of innovation. Now, we launched it in Moscow in June of 2012, and we're now wondering here in 2013 what the next example of innovation will be.